Hello, I'm Asif Khwaja and welcome to the part 2 of the approval workflow series. In this video, we will continue with our approval workflow that we started in the previous video. I will put the link to that video in the description. In this video, we will build the main approval and related actions. So previously, if you remember, we captured the approvers' email addresses in these two variables. This is the string variable in which we captured all the email addresses of the approvers separated by semicolons. And this one is the array of the email addresses, which contains the email addresses of all the approvers. So the next action that we are going to add now is the approval action. Now for approval, we have three different types of actions. We have start and wait for an approval. This one action creates an approval task and then waits for the approvers to respond to those approval tasks. But in our case, we are going to split this action into two actions. So create an approval action and then wait for an approval action. Now the reason we are doing that is that between these two actions, we want to run the reminders and other actions. So that is why we want to use these two separate actions for our approval workflow. So let's use the create an approval action first. Now create an approval action has four different types of approvals that you can configure in it. Once again, Raza Durrani has in one of his video explained all of these options in detail. So I will not go into what the differences between these are, but for our purpose, we will choose the custom responses, wait for all responses. And the reason we chose this option is because we do not just want to give the approvers option to approve and reject, but we want to give them custom options for not only approve and reject, but also the option to request a change. And we are using the option to wait for all responses. So this will make the workflow wait until we have received all the responses from all of the approvers. Even though if one of the approvers have rejected their approval task, the workflow will still continue to get the responses from the remaining approvers before moving on. All right, so let's start defining our response options here for the approvers. So we will say approve, and another option we will provide as reject. And the third custom option that we will provide is request a change. For the title, we can say please approve, or we can even give it the title of the request as well. So we could say title from the trigger action, which includes the title of the trip. For the assign to, we can use the variable that we have, which contains the semicolon separated email addresses of all the approvers. For the details here, again, we can say requester, the display name of the requester, submitted a travel request with the following details. And then we can choose to display the travel request fields, for example, the title and the start and end dates and things like those. So let me quickly copy that information and put it here just to save some time. So we are showing trip title, which is the title field. We are showing the reason, which is the reason for travel. Destination is the name of the city where they are traveling. Start date and then travel end date, and we have the travel cost. Now notice that how I have included these MarkDown symbols here in this field here. Notice that when I'm hovering on this field, you see a tooltip which gives you a URL aka.ms approval details. If you go onto that link, let me just quickly go to that link and show you the MarkDown information that you can refer to. So this is the link for approvals MarkDown support, and it shows you that what sort of information you can include in that approval. So you can use these codes to display different types of headers, for example. You can use different types of codes to use line breaks and even display things in lists. So like bulleted lists, for example. You can even display hyperlinks in your approval task that you are creating for the approvers. And here is the markdown characters that you can use to create tables. So you can see that you can use these symbols to create headings. This line you can create to define whether you want to left align or right align, or maybe centrally align the data in that table. So when you use these markdown symbols for your data, this is how your table will look like in that approval task that will be created. And that is exactly what we have done in our task here also. We have used that table markdown symbols to display this data in a tabular form. All right. And then after that, we will just tell the approvers that, hey, please approve this travel request. Okay. For the item link, we can actually include the link to the item, which is coming from the trigger, link to the item. And for the link description, we can say travel request. And that is what our create an approval action looks like. And next we will create the wait for approval action. And within the wait for an approval action, it requires the approval ID, that for what approval you want me to wait for. So we will provide it the ID, which comes from the create an approval action. So you can see under the create an approval action, we have an approval ID there, which we will choose. So this action will make the approval action wait here until all of the responses from all approvers have been received. After that, we will add a condition here to check for what responses we have received. So the response always comes in the outcome received from the wait for approval action. So we will choose the outcome here. Now, because we are using the approval action where all of the approvers will be providing their responses, it's not just one response or the first response that we are getting. So we cannot just say is equal to approve, for example, because the response will be containing multiple responses. If all of the approvers have approved, for example, if there are 3 approvers, then the response or the outcome will contain approve, approve, approve. So multiple approved values will be there in the outcome. So therefore, what we can say is that if the outcome does not contain reject, okay, so does that mean the outcome contains all the approves? Maybe not. So we can add another row here, and we could say that if the outcome also does not contain the word request, because if you notice, we have provided 3 responses that the approver can select from, either approve or reject or request a change. So here we are saying that, okay, if the outcome does not contain reject, and so there is an AND operator here, the outcome also does not contain the word request in it for request a change. So if both of these conditions are true, that means there is neither reject nor the request a change option in the response that the approvers have provided, which means all of the approvers have approved their tasks. So in that case, we will go into the yes branch of this condition here, and we will send an email to the requester that their request has been approved, and then we will also update the request item in SharePoint for correct status. But before that, we also want to capture the comments provided by those approvers. So for that, we will go and add an action called append to the variable. So append to the string variable. Now for this one, we will need another variable that we want to use here to capture all the responses or comments by those approvers. So let's create another variable here, and we will call that variable initialize variable var approval comments, and this will be a string variable initially empty. And let's rename our actions properly also, just so that we know which action is doing what. So inside our condition now, in the append, we will select our variable, the approval comments variable, and the value that we want to provide here will come from our responses, right? So we will say responses, and you will see we have a field called responses comments. Okay, so we can choose that comments. Now notice that when I choose this comments field here, it creates an apply to each loop here and puts this action inside it. This is because there are multiple responses coming from multiple approvers. So inside the apply to each loop, it puts the responses value here from which all the responses are coming. And then for individual responses, then we are picking up the comments of individual users or approvers. But we also want to display the name of the approver or responder. So again, if you search for the response, you will see that we have a field called approver name, responses approver name. So we will choose that one. And then we can format it a little bit. We can just put these 3 hyphens there just to format it for our final comments that we want to store in the SharePoint. And then between these two, let's put a colon here and then enclose the comments within these quotation marks. And then we also put a new line character here. So just bring that cursor on the new line just to make sure that every approver's comment appears on a separate line. Okay, so after that, we are going to send an email to the requester telling them that their request has been approved. Send email, and let's rename it to say send approved email to requester. And we will send the email to the requester's email address. So the requester will come from the trigger. We will say select requester email. All right. And in the subject, we can say your travel request is approved. And then in the body, we can type in dear and then the requester display name. And we can type in something like congratulations, your following request has been approved. And then we can show him the details of the request that they have put in. So let me copy and paste from here. So you can see that we have the trip title, destination, start date, and end date. Now within the email, we cannot use the markdown characters as we used in the approval action. This is only supported in the approval action. So in the email, we will just leave it as it is. And then after that, we can display the approval history, and then we can type in travel request approved. And then inside the brackets, we can display the date and time, the current date and time. And the expression would be something like this. We can use the UTC now function to display the current date and time, but then we are using the convert from UTC function to convert this into the Australian Eastern Standard Time Zone, and then this is the format that we are displaying it in. I will put this expression in the description of this video so you can easily access it. Let's click on OK. So we have the current date and time displayed here, and below that we will display the comments of the approvers that we captured in the variable approval comments. As you can see, we appended all the comments in this variable. So we are just using that variable here. And then after that, we also want to display the original approval comments that we had in our item, which was coming from the trigger, the approval comments. So the original comments had just one comment in it, that approval has started at this time by this person, right? So that comment will also become part of this email when it goes to the user. We can also display some kind of graphical character here to show an indication of the approval. So I'm just copy and pasting this one from my notepad. I already have it here, or you could simply use the Windows dot from your keyboard to open up this emoji window to choose whatever icons you want to use from here. So I'm just using this one. All right, so that looks good. And once the email is gone, we also want to then update our item in the SharePoint list. So we will use the update item action for SharePoint. We will choose our SharePoint site, which is the classic site in this case. Our list name is travel requests. The ID we can fetch from our trigger, which is the ID here. Okay, no other fields are mandatory here, so we can leave these non-mandatory fields as it is. They will not be updated. but we do want to update the status of our item. So showing as new, that's not what we want because the item has been approved, the request has been approved. So we can change the status to approved. For the approval comments, we can again copy and paste these same comments from here and put them in here so that they can be updated into our approval comments field of the travel request SharePoint list. Now for the start workflow field, this is important. Do we want this workflow to start again? Now you can see that this workflow is completing and all of the approvers have responded and the item is being approved. So the workflow is essentially being completed. So we don't want this same workflow to trigger again. So we will put the word no here. Remember how we are checking in the workflow's trigger condition? Let me go up here and show you the trigger condition. In the trigger condition here that we built in our previous video, we said that only trigger when the start workflow is not equal to no. All right, and then we have another condition where we are saying that only run if the status value is not equal to new, right? So we have these two conditions that are being AND here. So both of these conditions must match. So if the start workflow is not equal to no, only then this workflow will trigger. Okay, but in here what we are saying that when you update this item, change the start workflow value to no. So this update item action will trigger this workflow again because the trigger that we are using is when an item is modified. So obviously when the item will be modified, this workflow will try to run again. But because the trigger condition will not meet, because the condition says only run when the workflow start value is not no. But in this case, it is no, hence the workflow will not start and it will terminate here. All right. If these conditions match, which means that the outcome does not contain reject and outcome does not contain request a change, then it means the request was approved and we went in and approved everything. But if one of the approvers have rejected it, then this first condition will not match, right? Because the outcome would contain the word reject in it. Hence, this whole condition will become false and it will go into the no branch. So now in no branch, we need to check again whether the response is reject or request a change, because we could have received any of these two responses, right? So we can again check here that what is the outcome exactly if it is not approved. So we can select the outcome here and we can say, okay, does it contain the word reject? All right, so if this contains the word reject, that means one of the approvers have rejected this request. And in that case, we just want to send an email to the user that their request was rejected. And then we also want to update the item accordingly. And we can copy them. Let's copy all three from here into our clipboard and then paste them here one by one from my clipboard. So I can say apply to each, and you will see that it would be copied under our condition here. So we are grabbing all the responses, adding them into our approval comments variable here. So that's good. And then after that, and we want to send this is not the approved email, rather this would be the rejected email to the requester. And we are sending the email to the requester saying that your travel request is rejected. And then we can say not congratulations. We can simply say your following request was rejected. We can display the request, and then in the approval history, we can say the travel request was rejected. We can change this symbol to a red cross here, and then rest of the comments would come from our apply to each. Next, we want to update our SharePoint item. So we will go and get the update item. This time we will change the status to rejected, and then here we can say that the travel request was rejected with that same red cross symbol, or you could copy paste the comments from the previous action here. Now once this has been rejected, do we want this workflow to start again? We don't want to start this workflow when it is rejected. If the item has been rejected, that means the workflow has terminated, and the requester would need to update their request and restart their workflow again. Okay, so that is our reject branch. But what if this condition is false, means the outcome does not contain the word reject? Does that mean the outcome contains the word request? Probably yes. But I want to mention you something. What happens if the requester has cancelled their request before any of the approvers have even approved? Or if some approvers have approved but others are still pending, but the original requester has gone in and cancelled their request, then in that case, the outcome will not contain either approve or reject or request a change option. When that happens, the outcome becomes empty. The outcome is blank. And let me show you what I mean. So if I go into my action items, let me just open it up in another tab here. Now I don't have anything in the received section here, but if I click on the sent tab here, it shows me any of the approvals that I as a requester have created and sent to the approvers. And it actually shows me that, okay, I created this travel request, approval request, which went to these two approvers, Chris and Jack. Under this sent section, I can actually cancel my request by clicking on this option. So if I click on the cancel button here, it shows me the approval details and then also gives me a confirm button. So as soon as I click on this confirm button, the workflow that was running behind and waiting here for any of the approvers to provide their responses, this wait will be over. Okay, and you will get an empty outcome because the approval was cancelled. Okay, so in that case, the outcome field will become empty. Now that means we not only have to cater for that empty option over here when it is not reject, but we also have to add another extra condition here so that when the outcome is blank, it should not go into the approved branch here. This is very important. Okay, so we need to add another row here where we will say that when the outcome is not equal to blank, our whole condition here says that if the outcome doesn't contain reject, it doesn't contain request either, and it is not equal to blank. So all these three conditions, if they are true, only then that means the approvers have approved it. So we will go into our approved branch. But if this condition is false, then we are checking that, okay, does the outcome contain reject? If it contains reject, fine, go into the reject branch and conclude the workflow here. But if it is not reject, then we still have two options. The outcome could either contain request a change or it could be blank. So we need another condition here where we will check the outcome again and we will say, does the outcome contain request a change or the word request, for example. But if this condition is also not true, that means it's not reject nor request, that means it must be blank. So let's look at the cancel side first. We will go and send an email to our requester that your travel request was cancelled, and then in the message we can say, dear requester, your following request was cancelled, and then in the approval history we can say travel request cancelled at this time. We can change this character to, let's say, this red flag here because it's been cancelled, not rejected. And then we can display the approval comments. Now this approval comments, in case of cancel, we are not getting any comments because the outcome and response is empty. So we cannot use this variable here, but we can definitely display the original comments which came in when the approval was started. Okay. Similarly, we need an update an item action here to actually update our item with proper status, the cancelled status. So the status will be cancelled. And then for comments, once again, we can simply copy and paste these comments here. Let's get rid of these and paste these here. Now, in case of cancellation, do we want to restart this workflow again? No, we don't want to, hence we will simply type no in here also. So that's our cancel branch. What about our request branch? When there is a request for change that an approver has requested. For that one, once again, we will need to grab all the comments. So we will put that responses again, because even in case of request a change, some of the approvers would have put their comments as to what sort of change they want or what do they want the requester to do, right? So we need to capture all those comments, which we are capturing in our variable here again. And then after that, we will send an email to the requester, and this won't be a approved email, rather this is a request for change email. This one was our cancellation email, so let's rename that properly. So in the request for change email, we are saying that your request needs more information, and in the email we can say, dear requester, approvers have requested for more information. And in the approval history, we can say that, okay, the approval is going to pause here, so we can display a clock icon here, and we can say that travel request needs more info at this time, and there is the comments that we are capturing from here. We want to display those comments here, and then over here the initial comment when the approval is started. So this way the requester will know that, okay, what has been requested by the approvers. So the requester will receive this email, and then they can communicate with any of the relevant approvers separately outside this workflow via email or whatever way they would satisfy them that, okay, we have updated our item, can you now go in and approve it? In the meanwhile, we will go and create another approval task for that approver. Okay, so we will see how that works. So once we have grabbed all the comments, we have sent the requester email, we also want to update the item. So I will once again grab that update item action from my clipboard so I don't have to recreate this. So this time we will go and change the status from approved to pending, right? Because our workflow is not complete yet. The approver is requesting for more information, so it still has to continue. That's why we are changing the status to pending. And for the comments, once again, we can capture these comments here and replace these with these comments. So these comments will be stored in our SharePoint list. Now, do we want to start our workflow after they have been requested for a change? Yes. So this is the only instance when we want to start our workflow. So I will just write in yes, or you can just type in any other word, doesn't matter, as long as it's not no. Okay, so when this is yes, that means this update item action will update the SharePoint item, it will update the status to pending and mark all the comments there, but then it will also make this workflow variable, the start workflow column, yes. So when this workflow terminates here, then another instance of this workflow will start. And the trigger condition here will check that is the start workflow not no, because it says should be not equal to no. And obviously in this particular instance, because we are putting yes over there, it will not be no and the condition will become true. And the second condition here says that the status should not be new. And as you can see, the status is pending. So both of these conditions will be true, hence our workflow will trigger and it will restart. And when this time it restarts, it will get all the approvers, grab the email addresses, create a new approval workflow and resume the whole process again. But now you will question that when next time this workflow starts, it would assign the approval tasks to all the approvers who have even previously approved, right? Not just to that approver who has requested for change, but if there were other approvers, for example, 1 or 2 approvers who have already approved their tasks for this particular requests. What about them? So yes, in this particular design, you can see that this workflow, when it restarts, it will create new tasks and will assign those tasks to even those approvers who have approved. And that's not what we want, so we have to fix this. We will make sure that when this approval restarts, in case of the change of request, it only creates and assigns the approval tasks to the remaining approvers and not to those who have already given their consent, who have already responded. So that we will take care of later, but for now, you just understand that this is what we are doing when the approver has requested for a change or for more information. Then this is the branch that it will go in, and it will send an email, and then it will update our item and will restart the workflow. So with this, you can see that now we have actually completed our full branch here. So as soon as this wait for an approval action completes and the wait is over and all of the approvers have responded, if the outcome is approved for all of the approvers, if yes, then it goes into the yes branch over here, grabs all the comments, emails the approver, and updates the item with the approved status and closes and terminates the workflow. If the condition is not approved, then it goes into this no branch here, the big one, which is again checking whether the outcome contains a reject. If it is rejected, then it goes into the reject branch. If it is not rejected, then does it contain request a change? If it's request a change, goes into the request a change branch. If it is also not request a change, that means the request was cancelled by the original requester. Hence it goes in here, doesn't grab any comments, just sends an email to the requester just to notify them that you cancel the request, and then also updates the item accordingly with the correct status. Now the next scenario that we need to consider is that what happens if the workflow which is waiting here for all the approvers times out. As you know that the Power Automate approval workflows have a timeout value of 30 days. So if no approvers or at least one approver has not responded within that 30 days time period, then this wait for an approval action will time out. So we need to handle for that situation as well. And to handle that, what we will do is we will create a parallel branch under this wait for an approval action. In this parallel branch, we will add an action called get item. And with this get item action, we will simply get the latest update of our current item. So we will select our SharePoint site and the list, which is our travel requests. And the ID we will select from our original trigger, which is the ID. So we are just getting a fresh copy of our current item. Now this may not look so useful at the moment, but you will understand why we are doing it later when we actually look after the updating of our approvers, right? So those approvers who have already responded, they have already added their comments. We don't want to create their actions again when this workflow restarts. Okay, so we will understand that later. Okay, so once we have got the item, then we just need to go in and update that item in SharePoint for that timeout situation. So we will use the update item action again, and we will choose our SharePoint site and list again, which is travel requests. And for ID, we can use the ID which is coming from this get item action here. Okay, that's the item we want to update. And then for title and all other fields, we can leave them empty, they're not required. But for the status value, once again, we will say pending, because the workflow has timed out. The tasks were not completed and we have to restart this whole workflow. So the status would still be pending. Okay. And for the comments, we can paste the same comments as we did previously, but then this time we will say the travel request approval timed out at 30 days. And then we can also put the current date and time, that at what time it timed out. And then obviously we don't have any approval comments in this case, so we will get rid of that. But we will want to display the original comment, which was when the approval was started. So we are retaining all of our history for everything, for rejection, requesting a change, and even for timeout. Now in this particular case, when it's timing out, do we need to restart our workflow? We definitely do. So we will write an yes. So we cannot write no here, right? So obviously when this update item runs, it updates the item with all of this information, which triggers this workflow to run again. And when it runs at the top here, because the item got modified, the trigger condition matches because it says that the start workflow should not be no. And it's not no, we are setting it to yes. So it will run again. And we are not changing anything else. And this way the workflow will trigger and restart. Now, one more thing that we need to do here is that when the approval workflow times out, then all the approval tasks that it has created for various approvers, they still stay in their approval center. So if I go to my approval center and inside this received section where they can see all of their approval actions, they will still sit there even though the workflow has timed out and it has completed, and a new instance of that workflow is starting and new tasks are being created. Now, along with those new tasks, the previous tasks that were assigned to them and they didn't had time to take any action on them, those tasks, kind of orphaned tasks, will actually stay here and they will keep displaying here until the approver comes in here, selects those tasks and approves or rejects them, which will not actually do anything, but at least it will complete them and then they will disappear from this received section and go into the history section. So to help with that cleanup, we can go in our approval here and we can actually put an action, and that action will help clean up those orphan tasks from our approval center. But this particular action is related to Dataverse, which used to be called Common Data Service or CDS previously, but now it's called Dataverse. And in Dataverse actions, we have an action called update a row. Now remember that the Dataverse actions are premium actions because that's a premium connector. So you will need an appropriate license to use these actions in your tenant. But in order for our approval workflow to function correctly and have all of that functionality that we want to build, just like the SharePoint Designer workflows, we need to use these Dataverse premium connections to make it work properly. If you don't have a premium license for the time being, you can actually get a trial license. When you add this action into your workflow, it will offer you to actually get a trial license for this action. Okay, so for our update a row action, we need to select the table from our Dataverse, and the table that we will need here is approvals table. So just select that table. Now for row ID, we need to provide it the approval ID of this approval that was created here. So if you search for approval ID, which comes from the wait for an approval or create an approval, you can choose any of these. So let's use from the create an approval. And then that's the approval ID that this action needs. And all you need to do here to do that cleanup in the approval center is that there is a column here called status. You just need to open it and select inactive. Just change the status to inactive for that row from the approvals table where the ID matches this approval ID. So as soon as the status for that approval in the Dataverse becomes inactive, any of the pending approval tasks that were being displayed in the received section of the approval center, they will all disappear from here and they will go into the history section and they'll be able to see it over there. Okay, so that's a bit of a trick there to clean all of that stuff. Now this is not necessary for this workflow to function correctly, but I thought I'll just mention it to you because we will be using some other Dataverse actions later on also. And one last thing that we need to do to finish up with this part of the video is that we need to add a terminate action under this branch, and I will choose the status as succeeded. The terminate action simply terminates the whole workflow. Now again, at this stage you will find that this is not useful. Why are we using the terminate action here? Because our workflow is terminating here anyways. But as I said, remember that we still have to look after of sending the reminders to the approvers. We have to update dynamically the statuses of any approvers who complete their tasks. And for that, we will need more parallel branches on this workflow. And when those parallel branches will be running, we need this terminate action here to stop this running workflow. Okay, so that's why we are putting this terminate action here. And similarly, we also need a terminate action under this whole condition and branching that we did. So when any of those approval or rejection or request a change branches finish, then we should also terminate our workflow. So I'll put another terminate action here with the status succeeded. And finally, we need to make sure that this branch of actions runs only in case of the timeout. So we will need to configure the run after setting for this get item action here. And right now, if I go in here, you can see that it says that the get item action should run only after the wait for an approval action, which is this one, is successful. And that's not what we want. We only want this branch to run when that action has timed out. So this is an important setting that we needed to do here. So just click on done here. And now you will see that there is this red dotted line that appears for that action, which says that this get item action will only run when this action has timed out. And obviously, if it doesn't time out, then it goes into this section and that action doesn't run, and then none of the following actions run. Now for the timeout setting, if you look at the settings for this wait action here, you can see that the duration of the timeout here is currently empty, which means that that's the default setting and it will time out after 30 days. If you want this action to time out before 30 days, which normally you would do when you are doing the testing of your workflow, then obviously you will change this time, and we can change it by saying period time 2 minutes. So in our case now, when this workflow runs, the wait for an approval action will time out in 2 minutes. Okay, so I will leave it at 2 minutes timeout so that we can test it accordingly. So let's save our workflow one more time and we can test it now. So I will go back to my SharePoint list. That's a list where we created 2 requests previously. So let's quickly create a new request here, and we will say trip to Singapore. Reason for travel is vacation, which may not be feasible in these pandemic days. Requester is myself. Department, we will choose IT because we have the approvers defined for the IT department in our other list here, the travel approvers. We have the IT department and we have 2 approvers there, Jack and Chris. For the destination, we can type in Singapore. This is our location field. Travel start date is 22nd of September and 29th of September. Travel end date. Airline, we can choose Emirates, for example. The airfare is, let's say, $600. And then status is by default new. Approval comments is the field where we will capture all of our comments. And these 2 fields, as I mentioned earlier, are for our approval purpose, and we can hide them from the user, but right now we have displayed them here for our testing. So let's save this one. So the user can open up this item as many number of times as they want, update it, save it back, nothing happens. Once they are ready for the approval, they can select their item from here, and from the automate action, they can start the approval. This is the workflow that we had created in our previous video, right? So click on start approval, and then from here we can click on run flow. So the workflow has started and our status should now change to pending, and there you go. As you can see, this was new before and now the status has changed to pending. And also if you look at the workflow history or approval comments, it says that the approval is started by Asif Khwaja at this time here. And the start WF value has changed to yes. So it's no more no. Okay. So this approval has now gone to two users, Chris and Jack. Let me quickly switch to their browsers. And if I just refresh, we can also look at their email also. And yes, Jack has received an email for our approval. As you can see, the email says, please approve trip to Singapore, and all of that detail here with the approve and reject options here, and even request a change. Similarly, if we look at Chris Green's browser and just refresh there, and we can even look at their email also. And so this is Chris Green logged in here, and Chris has also received this email with all of that information and approve and rejected. Now remember that we have set in our workflow the timeout value of 2 minutes only. So every time the workflow is timing out, it's restarting itself and sending the approval again. As you can see, another approval has just started because that particular instance of the workflow timed out and it restarted automatically. So now that Chris has received this approval task here, let's go and quickly approve it. Approved by Chris Green. Submit. Similarly, let's go to the other user who has also received another task for Singapore, and let's quickly approve this one also. Approving. Submit. So both the assigned approvers have now completed their tasks. So if we now go back to our SharePoint list here, we should have all the history of approvals here, and you can even see that it shows you the timeout information as well. So the approval is started on this item by Asif Khwaja at this time, and then the workflow timed out once, and then after the timed out, it has now been approved. As you can see, the approval status changed just now and showing all the comments. So it says travel request approved at this time along with these comments. So Chris Green said these comments, Jack Black said these comments, and the start WF item or column, as you can see, has been updated to no, which means that the workflow will end here. It will not trigger again. Okay, so that all looks good. Our workflow is properly working as expected. We observe that our timeout branch is also working as expected, and our approval branch is also working as expected. We didn't test the reject and request a change options yet, but we will definitely do them when we have all the reminders and other options of our workflow built, and that we will do in our part 3 of this video series. So hope you are enjoying this, and I will now see you in the next video.